guys, it's me Andrea with Sucks For You in Houston, Texas, and I think it's about time we talk about light because it's pretty important stuff when it comes to keeping your succulents looking fine and growing strong. And maybe you live in a region that sees a lot of overcast weather, or maybe the climate forces you to bring your plants indoors part of the year, or you have to keep them inside all year. Maybe you just don't have a consistently bright space outdoors that's also protected from rain. That happens to me quite a bit. If so, this video is going to be helpful to you. And then also, if you're just interested in knowing more about succulent light requirements and what's happening with the sun at different times of the year and the different times of the day, how to maximize the most light you can get, that's what we're going to be talking about natural light, and we'll also be talking a little bit about grow light. So go ahead and read the video description so you can see what all we're talking about here. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. To keep it simple, just remember most succulents like at least 6 hours of bright filtered light or bright indirect light each day. Filtered and indirect light simply means something is happening between the sun and your succulents to lessen its intensity. Like leafy trees, curtain panels, screens, shade cloths, those are all examples of ways direct sunlight can be filtered before it reaches your plant. Indirect light occurs when a solid object, like a large tree trunk, a roof, or an umbrella, casts a shadow over a plant and blocks it from the direct sun, while the sky is still bright enough to reflect the sunlight back to your plants without the risk of them getting scorched. That's easy enough, right? Sure, but the sun is in constant motion, and just when you get a good idea of where to put all of your plants, the seasons change, the sun's path changes, the trees shed their leaves, and you're faced with a different light situation than you were 6 months ago. So let's have a look at what we can expect from the sun throughout the day and year. Right now you're seeing the Earth from the sun's point of view, and I'm using this really cool app over at andrewmarsh.com. It's Earth-Sun Relationship, a 3D model, and this is middle of July. The northern hemisphere is more visible to the sun, but if we take our slider and set it back to early January, now the southern hemisphere is more visible to the sun, and so this is their summertime, and they're experiencing winter in the middle of July, which is kind of mind-blowing, but our little Earth tilts and wobbles, and that's why we get our seasonal changes. And the whole reason I'm including this is, first of all, it's good for everybody to know, but also I have a lot of followers in Australia and other locations in the southern hemisphere, South America, Africa, and I want everyone to feel included and also understand that if I am giving advice based on my location in the northern hemisphere, I want you to know how to take that information and apply it to your location wherever you are. And this is a wider view of the solar system with the sun at the center, and we're looking at the middle of July, so summer in the northern hemisphere. And we'll bring the date down to December again, and you'll see the equator is tilted away from the sun, and the southern hemisphere is now experiencing summer. With the sun's point of view in mind, let's look at what the Earth's point of view of the sun looks like. And I'm using the 3D Sun Path app to show you where the sun's path is in the sky based on your location, the date, and the time. So right now we're at Houston just after sunrise, mid-July. And the sun is going to be rising in the northeast and then setting in the northwest. And my front door faces east, so I'm just going to orient it the way that I am familiar with, and I will push play so you can start watching the sunrise, and notice how the shadows are changing. Imagine you were a plant somewhere in this diagram. Just kind of pick a spot and watch what happens with the shadows, and when the sun is at its highest point, what happens to those shadows? They are almost non-existent. And again, as the sun starts to set in the northwest, let's look over and see what's happening in the south. There's not a lot of shadow action over there, but the sun is never really directly on it either. It's just kind of giving it a nice bright sky without the south ever really directly seeing the sun. And it's going to start to get darker as it sets. Let me go ahead and pause this. And then I want to show you what happens. Let's put the time back to, right around sunrise. Let's take the date. Watch where the sun is down here, where its position is when it rises. When we take the date and we move it to January. And also, it rises later in the day, so we need to bring the time up before we can even start seeing it above the horizon. And now the sun is rising in the southeast, and it'll be setting in the southwest. It is pretty different than what's happening in the summertime. So we're going to watch it again. We're going to look at the different directions and see what's happening. All these shadows are being cast to the northwest. Okay, let's pretend like we're a plant somewhere in this picture. And here's the north side. So in the winter, the north side is really not going to be getting any good light. It's going to be in shadows a lot of the day. It's never going to see much, or it's not going to see any direct sun. And so yeah, that's not a very bright area. On the other hand, south is looking good over here. Starting to get some direct sun, isn't it? So again, the sun's path changes. It's higher and lower in the sky, and that changes how long our daylight hours are. It changes where the shadows are being cast by objects that are going to be blocking your plants or not. And why you've got to move stuff around quite a bit throughout the year, or make adjustments to stationary plants you can't move, whether they're in the ground or in big pots. Now let's look at the differences between direct sun, bright filtered light, and bright indirect light. It's a little bit after 4 o'clock, middle of July, Houston, Texas, and these plants are getting what is known as full direct sun. Okay? And it is hot and it is bright and it is a bit too much for them. So what I have done temporarily is just put a mesh lawn chair in front of the echeverias, and I'm going to probably try to put up some kind of shade cloth or something as a more permanent solution. But some of them are okay with the direct sun, but they're struggling because it's hot, or they're just stressed, or they're not growing as fast as they would if they were getting a bit more shade. Or, to better put it, let's pretend like we're a plant and we're under this tree, and the sun is going to rise up and over the house, and then we're going to get some bright, fairly direct light for a little while before it starts becoming filtered by the tree, and it's going to start setting, and it's going to stay filtered the rest of the way. Okay, so that's a pretty good setup. It's getting bright light most of the day, and towards the hottest point of the day it is going to be filtered light. Not only that, but you can see there's all this nice sky reflecting the sun back to the plant. But remember that all those leaves are going to fall off, and then one day it's just going to be really bright, even though it might be cooler because it's going to be towards winter. But it's still pretty bright, and it still stays pretty warm here until like October, and it heats up pretty quick when spring comes. A little too quick. So that is filtered light. There's some filtering action from something between your plants and the sun. It's really making it nice and gentle, even though it's still pretty bright. When it gets hot outside, you do want to protect your plants from direct sun, particularly that really hot afternoon to late afternoon sun. So morning to, just a little bit before noon. The sun isn't going to be too crazy hot if your plants are getting it directly. But afternoon in the summertime, they're going to appreciate some shade and maybe even demand it. So here we are in summer, but when winter comes, really fall, winter through spring, it's a lot brighter down at the south end of the porch. And the pecan takes its sweet time to fill out, and it's already hot by the time it's got most of its leaves on it. So I do have these curtain panels in place to protect plants that I have on these shelves. And just everything's constantly in motion. You know, sun is a dynamic element, and that's why we're really going into detail about how it moves, because you're going to need to be moving stuff around more than likely. But you know, it's fun. It's part of the plant game. So these guys are in one of the rare bright windows I have in my house, and it faces east. It's at the top of my stairs. And so these plants get what is known as bright indirect light. Okay, because as the sun comes up, they get a little bit of direct light, but it's morning sun and it's more gentle because it's lower on the horizon. And then we have it start to move out of view where the sky is still really bright, but the sun isn't directly on the plants. And that's bright indirect light. It's pretty simple. It's also easy to complicate. So when you buy a new plant and the care tag just says well-lighted location or full sun, partial sun, or just sun, what it really should be saying is, for succulents at least, is 6 or more hours for bright indirect light or bright filtered light. That would be full sun. Part sun, partial sun would be 4 to 6 hours of that same light, and anything less than that would be, you know, qualified as part shade to shade, which most succulents are going to want at least 5 hours of this type of light. So you're probably not going to see many that will do well in a lot of shade. So yeah, another thing is, as long as the sky is visible to the plant, you know, and it's like getting light reflected back to it, it's getting sun. So even right now it's a bit overcast out, an overcast day can still qualify as, you know, part sun. And if you're getting 2 hours of light in the morning and then another 5 in the afternoon, that qualifies as 7 hours. So like 2 hours of direct sun in the morning and another 5 hours of filtered light in the afternoon equals 7 hours of sun for a succulent, and they should be pretty happy with that. Under the YouTube community tab, I posted that I was going to be making a video on light, and if anyone had any questions, I'm going to make sure to be able to cover everything. I did get a couple of people wanted to know, how do I know if my succulent's getting too much light? And the best way is to just kind of take the amount of time that they're getting in direct sun, okay? And if it's not morning light, you know, if it's not like before 11 a.m., if it's getting more than 2 hours of the afternoon sun and it's hot outside, then you might want to start to worry, but really only if it looks like it's stressed. And the way you can tell a succulent is stressed is by how first it kind of will look great. All the like colors might come out, and you'll be like, oh, it looks so happy and amazing. But then what happens is it starts to maybe go a little bit summer dormant from the heat, to conserve its energy, or it'll start to fade or look paler, and the little leaf tips, they might start turning brown or like shrivel up. Some of the leaves might start looking a little bit transparent, and eventually they might start falling off. So I think it's pretty obvious when you see a succulent that has too much sun, but the best way to tell is just what kind of sun is it getting, and if it's more than 2 hours of direct light in the afternoon, you might want to try and move it to another location where it's not getting so much sun. Now, the way to fix a succulent, it's pretty, if you catch it in time, you can just like take that succulent, put it in a location that doesn't get that direct sun. It's filtered, you know, more ideal light that we've been discussing, and water it maybe once or twice, and you should start seeing it perk up within a few days, if maybe up to like a week, but it should definitely start looking better. And that means it's gonna, if it's, let's say, a Haworthia and it's starting to get a little bit red, it's from the stress, it's gonna go back to green, and that's how you know it's happy again. If you think your succulents aren't getting enough light, you can start introducing them to more light now that you know what you're looking for, but don't just thrust them out into the bright sun right away. If you get a new box of succulents in the mail, remember they've been in a dark box for a few days, so really pay attention to this. To acclimate your succulents to more light, you're going to take that pot, put it in a location that is getting a few hours at least of bright indirect, bright filtered sun a day, and then repeat that process, add a little bit more time the next day, maybe an hour, and as long as they're looking happy, probably after like 4 or 5 days, they're going to be fine and happy in 6 hours or more of that bright indirect, bright filtered light. If you want to try and give them a little bit more light after that point, you can go ahead and try a couple hours in direct sun from the east in the morning, or from the south. And well, it's not going to get really direct sun, but you can put it somewhere really bright in the south. So I think we've covered most of what you guys have asked, and the things that I think are helpful to understanding where the sun is at certain times of the year, certain times of the day, and then how to make modifications to where my plants are located. But I also have grow lights, and we're going to talk about those right now. And you see I'm sitting out here, and it's bright enough, and I have plenty of places outside, but I still have grow lights. I'm going to tell you why. Right now I'm standing in my house looking out the back door, overlooking the patio, facing west. And even though this is pretty much the brightest point of the day, this spot is just too dark for a succulent. What'll happen, you can't even see the sky from here. What'll happen is it'll start growing that way towards the light. And so if you're growing your plants and you have to have them indoors and you don't have adequate light, a grow light is really going to be the only thing that will guarantee that your plants are going to get enough light and look good. I do think that if I cleared those trees out, that the south-facing window would probably be bright enough. Maybe not this time of year, but in winter when the sun is rising more in the southeast than the northeast, then that's probably going to get a little bit more light. And I might be able to get away with putting a plant like on a table nearby, but even so, see how blocked it is right now? And it's also dirty. I haven't cleaned my windows because there's spiders on there and I don't want to kill them. They have eggs, and yeah, I'm that kind of girl. This is one of my few windows that has decent light. It's another east-facing window downstairs. And even so, if I had an echeveria or something like that in this window, it probably would start stretching, etiolating as well. But I have a ponytail palm here, and you can tell that it would like some more light. I don't know if you can see in person, or on the screen, but in person, it's lighter green down in the middle, and that's a sign that it needs more light. It's also a sign of new growth, but it should darken up eventually. If not, then that means it's not getting enough light. And this is the north-facing window, and it never sees direct sun, of course, and it's just never really bright. So I can get away with rooting some cuttings, or rooting some cuttings, but not much else is going to be happy in this spot right here. So this is my grow light setup, and I have it outside for a couple of reasons. First, I really don't have a good spot indoors, and second, I do spend a lot of time outside and I want to be close to my plants. So all of this will apply to whether or not you have your grow lights indoors or outdoors, but there are some modifications you want to make on indoor succulent grow light setups that I'll tell you about in a second. So the reason I have grow lights is to protect my plants, make sure they get enough sun when it gets overcast outside for more than a few days in a row, or when it rains and all those plants on the windowsill right there the ledge get, that's just screens, so they get wet. And I have some seedlings that I need to make sure they have consistent light no matter what. And I've invested a lot of time in these guys. They're already over a year old and they're still pretty small. So I would be really sad if something happened and they didn't get enough light and they died or started growing weird. You can see I have the white lights, and grow lights come in a few different colors, especially the LEDs. You've probably seen them before. They can be like purple or kind of like a pink or even red. There's a few reasons why I chose white lights, and mainly because I like it better. It looks more natural. I can enjoy my plants more, and I don't like the way that succulents look when they're under purple lights, because they're all just like one color, and it's kind of hard to tell if they're if something's wrong with them. You don't really see the details as well. So I would suggest for you to get white LED or white fluorescent lights. This fixture is from a company called iPower, and it's got 6 bulbs and it has 2 switches. So right now we're only looking at 2 bulbs turned on, but if I flip the second switch, all 6 bulbs will be lit, and you can see it's really bright. And that would be pretty intense for my succulents. So this is I'm going to turn them both off just so the light looks better. This is a 2 foot by 4 foot 6 bulb. That's T5 fluorescent bulbs. Now you can also get LEDs, the tubes. I like this setup. If I'm really cramming everything on this 6 foot, it's a 6 by 3 foot table, I can fit like 70 plants under there. Okay, now I built this stand, but you can buy them for about $30 and up, and as you can see, the design is just very simple. There's a base, there's I could have done a better job bracing it right here. Anyways, but yeah, if you're setting these up inside, I do have fans outside because it's hot, but if you're setting up grow lights inside, it's a good idea to put a fan on them to create some wind resistance and toughen up their little stems, and it seems to help their leaves not fall off so easily. And just give them a little workout with a breeze. A ceiling fan or an electric fan is great. An oscillating fan, whatever. If you have something already, it's probably going to work. It's probably not recommended to put a bunch of stuff on top of your grow lights, but I need all the space I can get, and it's fine. Most fixtures, well, if you're lucky, it'll come with some adjustable clips, and I have some like heavy duty, basically zip ties holding that up. And I know people want to know how far away you should have your grow lights from your succulents. I'm going to tell you that I had them a lot lower early on, but I did have them outside, and they did not like it. They started slowing down their growth. They started, some of them fried, especially some of the smaller propagations. And so I decided to lift it up, and right now it's about, I can get some taller plants under here, but these bear paws are about 6 or 7 inches from the light, and so some of the shorties are maybe about a foot from the light, and they're happy, they're fine, and they're growing nice and compact for the most part. And I'm not going to push my luck with them because they're also getting supplemental light from out here as well most of the time. So just watch your plants. If you get grow lights and you want to start, I would just say the same way you would try and increase light, natural light, start the same way with your grow lights. Start about a foot above your plants, and then if you want to start lowering it down and see how they do, only do it for an hour or 2 a day to start and be really safe. The good thing about grow lights is, first of all, they are overhead direct light, but it's not intense like the sun, so your succulents are really going to do well and keep their shape and grow straight, you know, up, but stay compact. So that's a really nice thing about having grow lights. As far as the amount of time you want to leave them on indoors, I would say that depending on what other light they're getting, if you do have a window nearby that gets some decent light and you can put the grow lights nearby it, that's a little bit of extra light and that's going to help. But let's just say call it an even 8 to 12 hours under the lights. You can buy like an analog timer, though, about $8. I'll link to where I get everything again in the description below, and you can set it for whatever you think, and you experiment with it. But most of the time, if they're indoors, there's a temperature control and a lot of other light to worry about. So 8 to 10 hours is good. You can try a little bit more, and you can probably get away with a little bit less. And I'm sorry I don't have a more exact answer, but it just depends on what you're growing. It depends on how far from the plants the light is hanging. And yeah, it's just play around with it. Start out on the low end and work your way up. I'm just going to touch briefly on some more facts about grow lights that will help you decide which kind to get. But as far as the difference between the fluorescent tubes and the LED white tubes, well, the price, this setup right here cost me about $130, but a similar setup, about a 2x4 with the LED full spectrum white tubes, is right about $700. So again, this whole setup, table, lights, stand, everything cost me under $200, and I really just didn't want to pay that much for a fixture right up front, and this has done me really well so far. So unless you've got that kind of money to invest, it's a good investment, because LED lights last forever. They basically last 15 years or more. But if you don't want to spend that kind of money up front, I do recommend the white T5 fluorescent tubes, at least 6 tubes or more, and you can chain these together if you want to expand your space. And you know, they're really great. They've helped me save a lot of plants. You know, they get a little bit warm, so they do help keep them warm in the wintertime, and they keep me perky when the skies are gray, and I really like having them. And even at night, you know, I have a really nice light supply outside I can work by, so I can give you, you need more excuses to buy one, let me know. I got you. Can you see how this Graptoveria Debbie is kind of pointing that way, tilted that way? What happens is, if your light source comes from one direction the majority of the day, then your plants are going to lean in that direction. That's just what they do. They're heliotropes, and they lean towards the light. All you really need to do is turn them by a quarter turn or a half turn every few days or so, just so that the tilt is facing away from the light, and it'll just start growing in a nice, compact, evenly shaped plant. Even though I have her outside and she gets a whole lot of light, you know, of course it's mostly coming from the west, and that's why she's pointing that way. But when you have them indoors by a window, they're going to lean towards the window, and you're just going to turn them ever so often, and they're going to stay looking pretty good. Don't forget, there's a whole world of succulents out there that don't need a ton of bright light all the time, or, you know, they can handle some overcast weather for a few days and they're still going to come out looking good. And you know, particularly, you know, I love the ponytail palms because I love like the big caudex. Haworthia are more forgiving. This is a really nice aloe aristata. There's just, you know, euphorbias. There's all kinds of cool stuff that, you know, it's not a rosette or whatever, but it definitely maintains its form with less fuss. And I love them. I just want to say that it's going to be really hard to keep your succulents looking like they did when you got them. They come from a greenhouse in a really controlled environment, probably in some, you know, succulent wonderland like California, and you're trying to keep that succulent looking the same way as it did there in your apartment in Brooklyn. It's not going to happen. You can get close, okay, but don't judge yourself, and don't, you know, judge your plant, or, you know, give up, because your succulents don't look the same way that they look on, you know, all the fancy Instagram accounts and all that stuff. Just, you know, do your best, get as close as possible as you can, and just yours. It's still going to be beautiful. You're going to think it's even more wonderful because it's yours and you love it and it loves you back. I'm pretty sure we're nearing the half-hour mark on this video, but you know, I always like to be very thorough, and if you asked a question about ABC, I know your next question is going to be about D, E, and F, and I might as well just throw it in there. I'm also answering questions that people have asked me, you know, in the YouTube community or in other forums, in comments and stuff like that. So just trying to cover everything because I know you're going to have more questions even after all of this, and that's good. That's really good. But go ahead and click the show more. Check out my summary of these videos and links to other information that'll be helpful to you, where I get my supplies and all that fun stuff. And you know, as usual, if you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. Thanks, guys.